My foundational years, being adopted into a new family where I originate from a different place than the family I was adopted into, I learned how to embrace my differences and to accept and enjoy the differences of being in such a family.
Bringing my story, sharing something of myself, being vulnerable, I've always found that's always encouraged other people to be vulnerable as well.
I felt quite lonely, so I would express myself quite a lot in the arts, but cry myself to sleep because I felt like no one really understood me.
We have a responsibility to take that seat at the table. We don't have to do it in an aggressive way or kind of push for it, but how can we feel like we deserve a space there?
My worst fear would be, maturing in age and then reflecting back on life and seeing all of the opportunities I've missed because I was worried about what someone else thought about me.
Thank you so much for being a part of our growing community. It honestly is just such an honour and such a dream to see how Magnify is growing. For anyone who's new to our channel, Magnify is a network, community and platform focused on empowering ambitious women of faith to thrive in our various spheres of influence.
And we know how important it is to have safe, honest, authentic conversations as women of faith. And so we want to provide a space to do that.
My name is Ruth and I'm the founder and CEO of Magnify.
And my name's Rachel and I'm part of Team Magnify. We'll be your hosts and we'll also be featuring guests each time.
So if you like our content, don't forget to like and subscribe and most importantly, share with a friend who you think would benefit.
CHANTELLE Oluchi's passion for the creative field extends to her love for singing, songwriting and design. She produced her EP, Not Going Back, with her husband. CHANTELLE is an interior designer and teaches design as a lecturer at London University. Beth O'Neill is a professional certified life and leadership coach. She recently launched her own coaching business, Beth O'Neill Coaching, to inspire and equip others to reach their potential, and is the co-founder of Smuck London, a luxury hair, beauty and lifestyle studio. Getting comfortable when we feel out of place is something Beth and CHANTELLE have had to grapple with. Using the wisdom and insight they've gained from those times, we can't wait to get chatting about how our faith can help us to feel comfortable in the fullness of who we are. So, CHANTELLE and Beth, thank you so much for being with us today. And we want to talk a little bit about, I guess, being misunderstood, feeling out of place, feeling like we don't fit. Things that maybe when we're younger, we expect, but as adults can be a lot more difficult to contend with. And we know for our community as well, this will be an interesting and a helpful discussion. For many of us as women, we have times where we feel we don't fit or we're misunderstood or we're out of place. And I guess part of the narrative it would be good to hear from as well today is, do we just have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable sometimes as well? So we'll start with you, CHANTELLE. Just first of all, tell us a little bit about your formative years and some of the things that have shaped you.
I was constantly in a new environment from probably the age of 1, I'd say. And I never fitted in from then because I wasn't part of the family from, you'd say, from like birth. I was welcome into families, but not originally born into those families. So standing out and not fitting in has always been the narrative all my life, you could say. And I think I learned how to cope with that from then. It hasn't been easy, but a lot of my foundational years, being adopted into a new family where I originate from a different place than the family I was adopted into, I learned how to embrace my differences and to accept and enjoy the differences of being in such a family. And that has it's shaped me growing up in those years and helped me to. It hasn't been easy. It has had its challenges, being different. But now I recognize it as my superpower. And I love that about the process and about the journey.
Yeah, so right from the beginning,
yes.
This has been something that you've been working on.
Literally,
yeah.
It's a never-ending journey. And I've accepted that I don't fit in, and I guess it's easier in my situation because I'm not I don't have the same genes as the family that I've been adopted into. So I would naturally see life sometimes a little bit different, or I might process things a little bit different, but I'm okay with that. And I've accepted myself for who I am now. And I enjoy, the journey God has taken me on. And I do emphasize it hasn't been an easy journey getting to that mindset. Those informative years have allowed me, I guess, the permission to feel comfortable in my own skin today.
Yeah, that's good. And Beth, for you, your life so far, maybe some of your younger life, how has that been part of forming and shaping who you are now?
So I grew up in a small town in South Yorkshire, and my dad was the local vicar where I lived, and he was also my school's father. So he would come in and do Sunday school and do weekly assemblies and that sort of thing. So I grew up always feeling a little bit different at school. Like my dad was the vicar, being from a Christian family. And even in the church circles, I also felt different because my dad was a vicar and there was a little bit of spotlight or pressure, perhaps, inadvertently on us, me and my siblings. So I always felt a little bit different growing up. And even though I was from a really loving family and my parents were great, and being part of a church, your family's shared. My parents weren't just mine. We had wonderful things happening at all times in the house, people coming over for dinner, people staying, meetings, in and out. And I learned to share my family and share my life, which has brought in so many amazing things, my confidence with people, the way I connect with others, and living that open life. But at the same time, I think as a child, I didn't have maybe the attention that I was looking for from my parents, and that's caused a few different challenges along the way as well. And I think quite early on, I just developed this idea of not feeling good enough, and that's been something that's stayed with me in different ways. This sense of not being good enough, and that continued throughout my teenage years.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that's looked like in your teenage years and into being a young adult? So those feelings of maybe not feeling good enough, or just feeling out of place again, maybe like a bit of a misfit. Can you just give us a bit more on that and some of the examples of what that was like as a lived experience for you?
I think as a teenager, I was aware that I was different, like I said, with my dad, but also I just never felt good enough, and I didn't feel pretty enough. I didn't feel intelligent enough. I always felt like people were better than me, this perceived idea of people being better. And it got quite bad in my teenage years because I didn't feel pretty enough and I didn't like my body. I had quite a negative approach with that. So had an eating disorder, body dysmorphia, probably from 12, 13, going up through my college uni days. And these things just got worse. And from age 16 to 21, I rebelled completely, stepped away from my faith. I thought I was figuring out who I was, trying to fit in with other people, started taking drugs, got into a really unhealthy relationship. And at the time, you're just living it, so you don't realize how bad it is. But in hindsight and through counseling, I've realized, wow, that was a really difficult time. And I was searching for myself whilst trying to fit in. But in doing that, lost myself and lost my voice, lost my confidence. And it all, I think, stemmed from that place of never feeling quite good enough.
Yeah, it's a big thing to contend with. And Chantelle, for you, so from a really young age, you've just explained, even just by a matter of like your family origins, like feeling quite different. It's almost been something you've had to acquaint yourself with from being young.
Yes.
How's that affected your internal monologue as you've grown up? Being a teenager, being an adult, because you were saying there's obviously a journey going from just feeling different, feeling like you don't fit in, to becoming, actually, I'm okay with this, and this is my superpower, as you said.
Yeah, so I've arrived at the superpower recently, I might add. But so in the teenage years and in those years, how I would behave towards that experience of like feeling like I'm different, and it was something I couldn't hide away from. When you don't feel, when sometimes you might not feel like you fit in, and you can kind of hide it a little bit. I couldn't hide that I was adopted, because I'd be at school or I'd be around my friends and everybody would say, oh, I'm going to go home to mum and dad. And they've got their biological family around them. They look like their mum. Or someone might say to you, oh, you look like your mum, or you look like your dad. I would be at a family function, for example, and it'd be like, oh, who's that? Because I'm not from the family. So, I would always be introduced as, oh, this is our sister, or this is my daughter. We've adopted her. Do you see what I mean? Which was lovely in itself. And it's a beautiful thing that, my family were able to do, adopt me and give me a good life and things like that. But there's still that thing inside of you that knows you don't belong. You know that you're not, that you're kind of displaced a little bit. You know that it doesn't matter how much, love you receive or how much upbringing you receive, there is still that kind of niggle in you, feeling slightly like, oh, I'm just not good enough. Why didn't my parents want me then? So where's my mum and dad? Well, where's my sisters? Where's my brother? Where's my cousins? You do feel like that. And that in itself is something that, I struggled with when it got to teenage years. I was very good at expressing myself in the arts, in performance and dance and drama, but I was really hurting. I was really broken, actually, to be honest with you, in those years, because I couldn't really find where I was. I couldn't really find. It was almost like this something was missing in my mind of like trying to process. Yes, I have a family. That's great. They love me. That's great. But where's my family? There was still that part of you that still feels like it's missing, and there's no answers. There is no answers for why you was adopted or what happened or where are my siblings? Do I have brothers? I know I have a few sisters somewhere. Do you know what I mean? You crave that, and then you start to feel like, well, I'm on my own then. You know what I mean? I felt quite lonely. So I would express myself quite a lot in the arts, but cry myself to sleep because I felt like no one really understood me. I tried to express how I would feel at times, and I didn't feel understood. And I didn't feel like anyone really got me. And it's a hard thing to understand if you've not gone through it yourself. If you've not been adopted yourself, if you've grown up, and it's not like my parents passed away when I was younger. That's a different process. That's grief, But I was grieving a whole identity that I hadn't been introduced to. So I was grieving before I even knew who they were. So that was a process where I had to try and understand it. And if I'm honest with you, that I did spend quite a lot of years not understanding and walking in confusion. Walking in the confusion of not knowing how do I fit in. How do I can't even relate. I can't even see past the nose on my face because I'm so broken. I can't see anything else because I've just got this feeling of, I guess, heavy rejection. I guess that would be probably the feeling, is like rejection, because I had no answers. I had nothing to no one to ask any questions to at that stage of life. So that kind of made me quite angry, actually, and rebellious at times. I did have some years of rebellion where I just didn't want to. I just wanted to kind of retreat from everything, but being very angry and feeling heavily misunderstood. And that would probably describe me from probably the age of maybe 16 to about 22, around that, or not 22, maybe at 20, 21, around those years where I just felt like very misunderstood. Yeah.
And even kind of beyond that time,
yeah.
So coming out of the time, you maybe had a bit of a rebellious streak,
yeah.
and you're struggling with that internal monologue of, I'm lonely and I'm angry and I don't really know my heritage and my origins, and my parents, as you said, they've not passed away.
No.
So it causes so many internal confusions around our identity.
Yes.
Even as women of faith, we may feel, well, we know I'm here for a reason.
Yeah.
And actually God's created me and all of that. But then still the questions of just our biology and things can really matter to us.
Yeah.
Have you seen that monologue carry through into your 20s in other spaces? So maybe with friendships or with career or with work, that feeling of being misunderstood and loneliness, has that kind of continued into different spaces for you?
No, not all the time. It's really funny because growing into friendships, it was like, I'm coming in fresh. I'm coming in as Chantelle, not Chantelle with a history, you know what I mean, or history of childhood. It's, I've come into friendships neutral, and I've found a lot of peace in a lot of my friendship circles, because it's more of I find that they are more fascinated with it, and they ask questions, and the questions they ask actually, sometimes I leave my friends and I'm like, oh, that was like therapy. Yeah, because it's just felt really, really therapeutic, being asked questions or being someone wanting to explore, because they don't know, they're not around me all the time, if you see what I mean. So the questions they ask are different, and I'm able to express myself differently. So I felt very comfortable in those situations. And when in the working world, there are times where I felt major imposter syndrome, major oh my goodness, I'm not good enough for this. I'm just not good enough. I just can't do it. I just can't. And then I remember that I have to try. And I guess it's that part of me that says you can't give up, because with this journey has come a resilience in me and an extra drive. When I look at when I was a lot younger and I look at what I would like my future to look like, I knew I didn't want my children's childhood to be like mine. I wanted them to grow up with biological parents. I wanted them to grow up with experiences that they won't forget, in that way. And I kind of set myself up to look forward. And I was always like, well, when I get married one day, or when I have children, I'm going to do this. And that's kind of a hope that carried me forward. And was able to, to launch me into, into marriage and into being a mother. And those things drove me forward. So it was more of a thing where I'd sit and, if you will, daydream and think, oh, one day I'm going to have my family, and one day I'm going to have my kids, and I'm going to do it like this. And it's not all plain sailing, of course, nothing is, but there was always that drive in me that would, be down for a minute, but then I'd have that resilience of like, no, I can't. And I think it was a fear of being like repeating history. I didn't want to repeat history. I wanted to create a new legacy. I wanted to create a new narrative, and I wanted it to start with me. And I knew it had to start with me. So that there is a consistent drive in me that wants me to, I might cry for 5 minutes. It might be a good, really messy cry for 5 minutes. But then there's that part of me that's like, you've got to get back up. You can't stay down. You have to get back up, and even if I get back up limping, I have to get back up, and I have to look forward, and I have to see how I can navigate the future and what I can do best. And I couldn't do any of that without God. Being a Christian, I couldn't do that without engaging God's help. And therapy has helped as well. And just, I guess, acknowledging myself and understanding that, okay, I can't fit in. I never could. It was like a tall order. I could never fit in. And I just need to shine as bright as I can in the shoes I'm in, if you see what I mean, in my position in life,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Beth, obviously you spoke a bit about your experience of just the household you've grown up in and the village and all the things that kind of had a knock-on effect then even to your mental health and some of the things that you went through. It kind of coming into your 20s, that feeling of not fitting in, or you said about not feeling good enough, have you found that carry through into other spaces?
Yeah. So age 21 was when the rebellion, or this chapter closed. I found my faith again. This is in my final year of uni. And stuff started to shift and change. I moved to London, started working as my first kind of post-uni job. And amazing things started to happen, started to progress in my career, and started to make good choices and kind of start to flourish. But even amidst that, there was still that internal critic, imposter syndrome that you mentioned, that's always been such a strong voice that I'm conscious of. And it's funny because it's kind of, I've always been functioning and able to grow and succeed. And in the past 10 or 11 years since I've been in London, I'm so proud of where I've come from and the journey that I've been on and the work I've had to do to get to where I am. But it's still an ongoing process.
Yeah.
So even just different roles I've had, and every new role's brought a new challenge, and I've always stepped up to that. But the voice is still there.
Yeah.
And it's just been figuring out how do I manage that.
Yeah. And in those new roles and new spaces, and especially in your work, I think, how, because, you know, we can all talk to imposter syndrome and feel like, actually, this is just the common, I don't know, it's like the common thing that we all deal with.
Yeah.
But then you can have quite a strong internal monologue around just feeling I'm not good enough, I don't fit, and put on the brave face and be the high functioning woman that you need to be in that space.
Yeah.
How has your relationship with God helped you in those times where you felt there's had to be a big step up, and straight away you've got that voice saying, okay, I don't know if you can do this, I don't know if you're good enough, I don't know if this is for you.
Yeah.
How has your relationship with God guided you?
Yeah, it's been huge. So many things that happen subconsciously that I've been reflecting on recently, and part of that is thinking about my purpose and my calling. And since I was young, I've always had dreams and pictures of me leading groups of women. And I've had people say words to me in the past few years about helping people to overcome and break free from chains and things that hold them back. And so whenever I felt I'm not good enough, I've always felt this like quiet voice of God being like, you're important, your story is important, you're here to help set people free, and to help people find themselves. And I think that I'm almost like, not sure whether God chose that path for me, the one that I had pre-21, but it was so helpful to be like, I've been to these dark places and I'm overcoming them. The voice is still here, but actually I need to overcome this now because it's important for me to be able to help others and serve others. So knowing my purpose, knowing my calling has been really important. And just knowing my identity in God. I was made by God. I was made for a purpose. He knows every hair that's on my head. I'm loved by him. Knowing that in my weakness, that's where his power is. And just, I think part of imposter syndrome is thinking that other people are better than you. And so remembering that God makes us all equal, and actually when I step into a space where I might feel intimidated, in my role as a coach, I often train and coach senior leaders. So I'm in some of those big spaces and naturally I feel intimidated. So one thing that's been helpful for me is being like, okay, we're equals here. I've got something important to say, and actually I'm facilitating a discussion, and just think having that mindset can be really helpful. So there's a couple of tools that I've had to adopt. But knowing what God says about me and about others has been so helpful.
And that kind of conversation that you're having with yourself, for example, before you walk into a room where you feel like, okay, I know right now this is going to be a big deal for me because I either feel out of my depth or I just don't feel on par with these people for whatever reason. Is that something you would do every time? Just as you need to talk about the practical tools.
Yeah.
What are some of those practical tools? Is it that actually speaking to yourself and reminding yourself who you are before you go in a room, or what has that been like for you, Beth?
Yeah, such a good question. I think when I know that this piece of work's coming, whether I've pitched for it or someone's asked me to do it, there's a process to get to that point of stepping into the room. And part of that is acknowledging how I feel before even going into the space. What's going on for me? There's just something so important about being kind to ourselves and acknowledging, okay, how do we feel and where does that come from? So for me, I often think, oh, that's the little girl in me that's scared, or the little girl that's feeling left out. And I'm like, it's okay, we've got this. So going through that, like figuring out how I feel, and then think about, why am I doing this? What's my purpose? How is this linking to my overall vision or linking to my values? One of my values is courage. So I know that I take risks because that's important to me, to do things that scare me. But then actually before I even step into the room, I'll definitely pray. And I think there's something physically about taking space. So I like to do some stretching or some walking around the room. I know it sounds a little bit crazy.
No, it doesn't.
I'm just like, let's just get as big as possible to feel like I'm here. And when I'm facilitating in a room, I want to step into that space, use eye contact, use body language, even though the inner critic and everything inside of me is like shrink, shrink, shrink. I have to physically reject that. So something about stepping into the space has been really important.
Yeah, that's actually really helpful. I don't think it's crazy at all. I'm taking notes. Chantelle, I know things have been a little different for you just by the nature of this has been something you've walked with a long time.
Yeah.
Just a question though, do you think we've developed a bit of a chronic fear of being misunderstood? Just even with how society is? I get it, because obviously we're all careful with what we say and what we don't say, but I think that level of almost editing ourselves, I think it runs way deeper than like pre-social media and everything else. It's just a fear of being misunderstood sometimes. And I know you mentioned about feeling you don't fit, feeling like you're misunderstood. How have you handled that? Have you kind of just become comfortable with, I'm going to be misunderstood at times? And if you have, how did you get there? And if not, what's it like to battle with that?
Yeah. I don't think I've got there in every situation. I think there are certain segments or certain areas in my life where I feel like I'm in control here, in a sense of like, if I'm misunderstood, that's fine. But I find that it's so strange. I only really express myself in areas I'm comfortable in. I know that's really strange. It's like a trust thing. So I think naturally with everything I've explained so far comes an issue of, do I trust people or not? And I'd say my trust levels are not high, unfortunately. But when it comes to misunderstanding, I've tried to develop really meaningful relationships. And when I'm misunderstood in those relationships, I'm asked questions, you know, the person might come back and say, what did you mean? Or could you explain further? And I love that. I love the two-way dialogue that we have where I can explain myself, or I can be asked questions, or I can clarify. And then on a wider sense, where misunderstanding can be, and I do feel like we, you know, as a society, as a world, we have definitely developed a fear of being misunderstood. And I think that in that, my role in that is at times I do shrink. I'll be honest with you. I do tend to just go off in the corner and just kind of like make myself a little, you know, I try to hide basically under a rock at times. I have to be honest with that. There are times where I haven't quite mastered stepping out when I'm uncomfortable or feeling misunderstood, that fear of being misunderstood. But that only comes out in certain areas in my life. So it doesn't necessarily come out in friendships or at work necessarily. Sometimes it comes out in other areas of my life where I might feel like if I say too much, I'll be misunderstood. So maybe if I don't say it in the first place, there's no risk of that, if you see what I mean. So there are some areas that I'm still working on and I haven't quite mastered yet. And I'm still asking God for wisdom in those areas. And I think there have been times in the past where I've gone in, you know, like, you know, willingly expressing myself, if you will, and being heavily misunderstood, being heavily judged for it, and always being a bit penalized for it, or you know, and I guess there is that emotion of that I don't always want to take on. So I tend to, I guess, avoid that by just kind of retreating and just walking slowly into a room and just like very opposite from Beth, where Beth is like, right, I'm here. I'm only like that when I'm really comfortable with the situation. I might be like, right, everyone, I've arrived, you know, and then we'll have a lot of, you know, fun with that. But yeah, I'm still working on that. And that's something that I have to take God's lead on every step of the way.
I really think it takes a lot of trust for any of us to show up as ourselves and be fully ourselves in any different space, whether that's work or in friendships or in new environments. Yeah. Can you just talk to a bit what that has been like for you? How do you show up fully as yourself, even when you're struggling a little bit to trust people, or even that you might be rejected in some way?
Yeah. So I think, like, for me, when it comes to like friendships, relationships, and things like that, I think I start slowly. So I do a lot of like just feeling it all out first, just feeling it out. And I myself, in terms of the fact that I'm pleasant and polite and engaged in the relationship, but where I would share anything personal or anything like that, that would probably take a long time. I've got friends that, it's so funny, I met up with my friend a few weeks ago and she was like, we've been friends for a really long time and now our friendship feels like it's going to a new, deeper level. So I take a while, I'm a bit of a slow burner sometimes. And there are some people where you hit it off straight away. You trust, it's almost like you meet them and it's almost like something about them, you just trust them straight away, or you trust that you can 100% be yourself. I'm quite a quirky character. I'm quirky. I like to, sometimes do a little bit of an electric slide across the living room floor. I'm a bit like, I'm just full of energy and I love doing that, but I can only do that around like areas where I'm like, okay, I can be myself, so if I started a new job, for example, I'll be a lot more reserved at the beginning. I don't want to scare them away, but I'll just be, that reserved character, and of course to get the job done. But just in terms of character, I do withhold. I do a lot of withholding. I think that's definitely down to that fear of being able to trust. Can you actually handle who I am? Because I feel like again, going back to earlier years, I have been, I guess, open, because, as a child, you're just open. And then I think like growing up, I've learned to taper how I approach relationships, and kind of like I don't give everybody too much, if I feel like I can't fully, lean into that relationship. And I think that's and I think as a result of that, that's kind of like transferred into my relationship with God at the beginning. Just I think it's just understanding that, what, God, I can actually trust you. You've never failed me, and understanding that, God, actually, you're not like human beings. You're so different from human beings. I can actually 100% be myself around you, and you accept me for just who I am. And I think, maybe a couple of years ago, I began to really understand that. And also my husband, he's a really, really amazing person. From the get-go, God has just given him this supernatural ability to really understand me. And I've been able to really enjoy my marriage and enjoy him as a friend and a person, because I'm able to just be my 100% self around him, and that's just been so liberating, just to be completely myself, whether I'm having an off day, a great day. And sometimes I might have to call it out early. I'm like, I'm not in a really good mood today. I don't know why I'm so sensitive, but I think I need a cup of tea before we carry on in this day, because it's also recognizing my emotions, which I've tried my best, I think, over the last 3-4 years to do my best with that, to just say to myself, well, how am I feeling today, and then if I'm feeling off about a friendship or a relationship or any kind of situation, or a work situation or a family situation, asking myself those questions. Why am I upset? Okay, what's upset me? Why am I so happy? Why do I feel it's super loved today? What was that? And I try to almost counsel myself as I go along. I do a self-check quite regularly. And that kind of helps me to show up as myself a bit more in relationships. And whether that means I might have to be a bit more reserved, because that relationship might not be able to get the full version of me, and I've had to protect my energy, as it were, protect my space. I don't feel like everybody needs to see all of me all the time. I think at one point of life, I was trying to give everybody everything at the same time, and I was tired. It's exhausting, and also I felt like I opened myself up a bit too much for that rejection, for being, I guess, betrayed, as it were, and for disappointment, if you see what I mean. And now I try to take God's lead in now, as to how and where I should show up and give my best. And that's really helped me to navigate friendships and any work, relationships, family relationships, just to show me God show me how I need to interact in this moment with this group, or even if I'm in a group setting, knowing what place I need to take that day. Maybe that day I'm the quieter one, because there might be other voices that are coming through a bit more stronger, that they need to be heard that day. And then there might be a day where I'm heard the most because I'm willing to share, and I'm like, guys, and guess what, So I think I just take it as it comes, and I try to read the situation as best I can prayerfully, because I'm like, God, like, help me in these situations. What do I do? And also just reading the situation. I don't feel everyone deserves all of me all the time, to be honest with you. There has to be something that I keep for special occasions, as it were.
I think sometimes as well, even in my own experience, just trying to be fully who we are and be authentic about who we are. You're right. It obviously depends what room we're sat in, which seat we're sat in.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes I've found helpful just seeing what lands a little bit when you're in a new space. It's like, if I give you this part of me, are you going to reject it? Am I going to know pretty quickly whether this is going to go down or not?
Exactly.
I think there's a sense of almost, that's like taking a little step forward sometimes. It can take a bit of courage to do that.
Yeah.
But I think some of that also works positively against feeling that we always have to fit in, but feeling like, do you know what, I don't know if I fit in or not, but I'm still gonna show up a little bit in this way and just see how it works. Beth, for you, especially in your work and in the different kind of ventures that you've been involved in, how do you try and show up as you are? So not as the projected version or anything that's, fake's the wrong word, but like anything that's too like, I'm just trying to put this together, but show up as you are and feel, no, it's okay. I'm good enough to show up as I am today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good that you mentioned that actually about the realness, because I had this idea of having to be perfect and professional. And when I moved to London, I even tried to change my accent a little bit. Sound more southern. Hilarious.
The struggle's real. The struggle's real. I'm a northerner. It's like, we need to fit in more.
Exactly.
Even that, sorry, just to say, that small example of even the fact that we'll try and alter the sound of our voice to feel like we fit in more is huge.
Yeah, it was definitely early years of being in London. I was trying to go after this, and I just craved the idea of perfection and professionalism. But what I've found, especially through learning how to coach, and I've been working with an incredible social impact and coaching company for the past 4 years, as of this month, is when I'm going to be going to my own thing. But through this organisation, one of their values is authenticity. And it's been really great for me to work with a team where we are encouraged to be honest. So whatever I'm feeling, however I'm feeling, and when we go into the coaching setting that day with my team, we acknowledge how we're feeling right now. How's everyone doing? We'll pray together and we check in. And a big thing around coaching and facilitating is, 1, being you, 2, connecting with people. So I love having a chat. I love being vulnerable. I love, like, how can I use my story to break down any walls. So oftentimes if I'm in that space, if I feel uncomfortable, I'll probably share a personal story or break the ice or share something funny soon into the session to get people to feel more comfortable. So I think bringing my story, sharing something of myself, being vulnerable I've always found that's always encouraged other people to be vulnerable as well. So I've sort of used that a bit like my superpower, vulnerability. And like you were saying, sometimes you can overshare.
Yes.
Or I've definitely had those vulnerability hangover moments. I'm like, why did I say that? But a big thing for me is connection. My mum was just, whenever you'd come into her home, no matter who you are, you'd get a big hug, you'd get a cup of tea. And I learned how to host and how to love people well. And my friendships and my relationships and connection is just so important. And that's been a real tool and skill that I've used when I'm feeling intimidated. Is like, how can I connect with these people in the room? How could my story, my vulnerability reach them?
Yeah. And when we feel like we don't fit maybe in a certain space, which sometimes can be legitimate, maybe we just feel there's no one like me here. There's no one that looks like me, sounds like me. I feel I've got to become someone else when I walk into this space, which whether we like that or not, we sometimes feel like that we've got to preserve ourselves. I guess it's also part of our self-preservation and protection sometimes. But that can be it can be a real thing and a real feeling.
Yeah.
Beth, I'd love to hear from you. What responsibility do you think is on us when we feel we don't fit? Because sometimes we're in an environment where we maybe feel a little bit pushed out, and that's legitimate. But what responsibility do you think is on us as women when we feel like we don't fit in? To either try and fit in or to say, no, I feel a bit uncomfortable, but there's a seat for me here and I'm going to sit at it?
Yeah. It's a big question. I think so much of it is internal. So it's almost figuring out what's going on for me. And maybe actually people are rejecting me in this space, but maybe there's something going on for me. So I think that we have a responsibility to take that seat at the table. We don't have to do it in an aggressive way or kind of push for it, but how can we feel like we deserve a space there? And so if I find myself in a room shrinking back, I think, Beth, step forward. Is that literally stepping forward? Is that talking to someone? Is that connecting with someone? What can I do? I think from experience as well, for me, having a big community has been so important, and having people that support me and champion me and mentors and coaches and everyone, that's brilliant. I've so loved that. But they're not there in that moment with me. I'm there. So what do I even hear them saying, or what do I need to do to take a seat at the table? So yeah, I definitely feel like there's a responsibility there. Or even just naming it. I think something that I've learned as a coach is the importance of acknowledging how we feel and naming what's going on for us. So in some of my friendship groups, if something's occurred or there's an awkwardness, I will speak to a friend either on the side or in the group and say, this is how I'm feeling, what's going on for other people, and just bringing that realness. And people are like, oh yeah, I feel that too. Or, you know, if a friend accidentally does something that annoys me or, you know, has left me out of like a birthday party or something, whatever like the situation is, I'll have a conversation with that friend because I really do value honesty. And whether it was intentional or not, it's really important, I think, to name what's going on for us and try to make sure that nothing's hidden. It's kind of like if you don't say something, bitterness grows or misunderstanding grows. So it's really important for me to be honest, especially with my husband as well. If we notice something's off with each other, very early on, one of us will check in. He's been brilliant, actually. He studied psychology on his own accord alongside his uni. And when we met, we'd both had failed engagements prior to meeting each other. We both had counselling. And it was just surreal to meet someone at a similar stage of life, wanting to connect, and having had both been through a lot of inner work to be able to communicate effectively. So honest communication, giving each other feedback in love, trying to understand each other and see the positive has just been so key. So having a good partner to understand you and to help you process things and to communicate effectively with each other has just been so good.
Yeah, and obviously a helpful springboard then in other areas of your life as well.
I can test things on him. Yeah, it's like sometimes I'm like, oh, can we talk through this conversation? Or, you know, trying things out with him, and I've kind of taught him how to coach me through situations now. So yeah, that's been brilliant.
I think what you said about naming things is really important. And I wanted to ask you, Chantelle, when you've been in spaces where you feel like you don't fit as an adult, how important has it been for you to be able to name it? And then again, that same question, what responsibility do you see is on you then to, I don't know if it's to make yourself fit or just to feel uncomfortable or comfortable, but to still stay in that space when you feel it's somewhere that you need to be.
Yeah, I think the way I talk to myself in those moments and the words I use, and when I'm in maybe a work setting or somewhere where I'm just like, I don't fit in, or and it's sometimes now because as I said at the beginning, not fitting in has been a normal feeling for me. So I have to remember that, okay, Chantelle, like, you need to grow up now. Like, you need to grow out of this. You're not fitting in how you see yourself, because that's not you anymore. You know, as you said, as an adult, you know, growing up and having these opportunities that I may have worked hard for, but not feeling like I deserve it, even though I've put in the work, or even though I've applied for it, or even though I've been invited to sit at the table. That feeling of like, oh, I didn't know I was going to get it. Like, you know, that, you know, that kind of feeling. And what do I say to myself in those moments? You deserve to be here. God wouldn't bring you this far if he didn't want you to be here, you know. And those are the type of, I guess, like, encouraging things I say to myself. Like, if you don't take this opportunity, then who will? You know, you're going to regret this. You know, there's some things I have to talk really harshly to myself, because that's probably how I can hear myself, if you will. Like, sometimes I'm kind to myself, and there are some moments where I have to almost, like, you know, tell myself off a little bit and say to myself, you know, you need to get out of this. This is a sulk, you're sulking, or you're feeling like you're less than, but why? You know, and I think it's just me again going back to, well, why are you feeling like that, Chantelle? Like, what is it about this that you're feeling? And then most of the time I can kind of identify it and think, oh, no way, I'm not going to let that stop me from this opportunity. You know what I mean? And I kind of, like, you know, it fills me with a bit more confidence, knowing that I can kind of, like, you know, almost march in there and be like, right, I deserve to be here, you know, and I'm happy to be here. And knowing that I'm almost robbing myself, I'm doing myself a disservice, not trying to engage, or, as you say, like, stepping into the room and and pulling in and leaning in into opportunities and relationships and new things that, you know, things will have. I think my worst fear would be, you know, maturing in age, and then reflecting back on life and seeing all of the opportunities I've missed because I was worried about what someone else thought about me, you know, and what someone else, because the truth is, we're all trying to fit in. We're all trying to fit into a mold someone has created. Who's got the answers? None of us know perfectly how to fit into something, you know. Even if you're going for, like, a job and you need a qualification, yes, you might need a qualification for that job, and you get that qualification, but you're still an individual behind that qualification, and you still need to engage in the job. So you're still unique, you know, even though we all might have the same qualification, for example, or the same accolades or the same wealth, you know. We're still people behind that, you know, and we're all trying to fit in. There's always going to be someone better. There's always going to be somebody that has more. There's always going to be someone with the latest, or, you know, whichever way around you want to put it. But I say to myself, I am deserving of this. Like, if not now, then when? You know, and I always ask myself that other question: if I don't take this opportunity, will I regret it? You know, and then the answer is usually, oh yeah, I will regret it. Then I have to talk myself into, okay, so if you're going to regret it, then you're going to need to step up. So step up. You know, say it, do it, sing it, jump, dance, you know, design, you know, or whatever, speaks, you know, be honest, you know, and those are the things that encourage me into things. And those are the things I encourage with my children as well. You know, I have to say to my children, you know, come on, guys, like, you guys are amazing. You rock, you know, like, come on, you can do it. You know, you know, God's on your side. You can do this. You're as equal as the other person that's, you know, on your team, or, you know, in your class, or your peers. So you're as important as they are. So come on, let's go, let's do it. You know, let's drive there right now. And they always laugh at me, because I'm always, like, in the middle of the night going, right, let's get our shoes on, we're going right now. And they're like, all right, Bob, we'll wait till the morning, you know. But just to show them that, like, come on, like, you know, you can do it, you know. And I have to say that to myself, because I now realize, you know, my eldest child is 12, and I realize that these children are looking at me, you know, and how I see myself is easily going to rub off on them for how they see themselves. And what kind of image do I want them to, because I can talk all day, you know, but it's what they see me doing.
Yeah.
That will leave the most impact on them. And even when I'm afraid, and even when I don't know what I'm doing, and even though, you know, kids don't come with an instruction manual, and I'm like, Lord, help, you know, I have to know, and I have to walk forward with God, and I have to walk forward with, okay, if this goes wrong, it goes wrong, it's fine, we'll be all right, we'll fix it. and that's that's the kind of internal monologue or dialogue I have with myself, where I'm like, okay, go on, Chantelle, do it, because you're going to regret it if you don't. And what will happen? Someone else will get the opportunity, and you'll just be like, oh, I could have had that, because I should have done it, or I should have engaged when I was around that group of people. I did have something to share, and I didn't share it. I did have something to say. So, and I find that I get the most fulfillment from that, being able to share in the right spaces, in the right times, and saying the right things. And I see the encouragement that has on someone else, the impact that has on other people's lives, and that brings me great fulfillment, being able to really share and to really engage and build good quality relationships and build new ones, build new relationships and show up as much as I can, because I'm finding that we're all trying to fit in. So none of us really actually have the answers, and that's what I take great comfort from, is knowing that actually you're probably just as scared as I am. So let's just jump together, and just finding peace in that, and knowing that if we both get it wrong, we'll dust ourselves off and we'll just try again, So not because we don't all know it all,
That's it. Yeah. And I think, you're saying about we have times where we're uncomfortable, and then we move forward, we step up, we're uncomfortable, we become comfortable again, and that, I guess that's just that's a pattern of life as well. I wanted to ask you, Beth, because even in your career, you're doing or have done two very different things as well. So I'm sure as you stepped into different spaces, you felt very uncomfortable, and then maybe found your feet, got a bit of confidence, a bit of courage, felt more comfortable. What has that been like for you? Because I feel like sometimes we can define ourselves so much like as just this one thing, or in this one era of our lives, or under this one career path that we chose. But then when we choose to step into something else, those feelings can very quickly flood back of, I'm not good enough. I'm not perfect enough for this. I've not had all the training in this. Like, what do I do? We almost feel out of place again. So what's that been like for you, even just stepping into new territory in your work?
Yeah, I've done lots of different types of jobs. My CV is a lot. But I went from project management to being the co-founder of a beauty and lifestyle studio, and then onto coaching. I actually started coaching around 7 years ago, and that was kind of something that I grew on the side until I joined Resurgo, this coaching company, about 4 years ago. So coaching's been a gradual learning process. When I joined the SMUC team as an investor, I wasn't planning to work there. Me and my husband wanted to invest in a startup company. My friend was the owner. We really believed in this vision for empowering women and natural beauty, beautiful inside and out, and we just loved her vision. So anyway, I ended up working there for about 6 months, which was a big change. Being part of a startup company, my business partner took a few months off, so I stepped into her role, interim CEO, no CEO experience before, pitching to investors, leading a team, managing hairstylists, just so many new things. And looking back, I'm like, I don't know how all that happened. I know my husband was there, which was amazing, and my father-in-law was great support. But I think I just had to be myself. I had to trust my instincts. So many roles and so many jobs that we've had can be transferred. So it's like, how can I apply project management to this, for example? Or how can I apply what I'm learning in coaching to these relationships that I'm managing? So just kind of, some of it was thinking on my feet, some of it was just transferring skills, and some of it was just utter terror, but then choosing to walk in and be like, okay, how can we do this well? Acknowledging how I'm feeling, but still going for it. It's kind of like, because like I said earlier, I really value courage. I don't step away from things, I step towards them and figure it out as I go along. But having a faith was so important during that time as well. Having a support system around me and finding joy and excitement even in the fear. It's kind of like, we invested into this company for a reason. We love the vision. How can I get behind that vision and be excited even though I feel the way I do? And it's the same with other jobs, other responsibilities, even working as a leadership management coach. There are times that I really fear what I'm about to do, but then I think, this is what I'm passionate about. My love of learning, my love of personal development, coaching is the favorite thing I've ever experienced. And how can I bring that joy, that passion, and remember my why I'm doing this, and how this meets my overall aim. So it's like, feel the fear, do it anyway, but don't just do it anyway. Try to enjoy it. So I think self-care has been so important for this journey as well. How can I do things that I enjoy, especially as a new mum? My son's just turned 18 months and things can be hectic at home. I've been working, mum, and running my own business. As of this month, I'm going to be doing my own business full time, so that's going to be great. Hopefully we'll have some even more flexibility. But having my mindset right, so I work out 3 or 4 times a week. I love that. I work out with my son, Joe Wicks, on YouTube in the morning. He just knows. He comes in. He's so cute. He brings his little yoga mat, puts it next to mine, and we do a bit of a HIIT workout or something. And I love the fact that my son's seeing me like take care of myself and doing what I need to do. We'll go for walks together, go out in nature. We sing and dance around the house, and just bringing in like this idea of freedom and self-care. And when I'm setting goals for myself, making sure that these align with what I'm passionate about, but I do them in a way that feels good rather than feels pressure. How can I do this and enjoy the process?
Yeah, I love that. And just coming back to kind of just even your relationship with God in the midst of this, how has kind of your relationship with God helped you to make peace with some of the difficult things that you've had growing up?
Yeah.
Because of course they have an impact on us. So it can be hard to be thankful for everything that's happened to us at the end of the day. Let's just call a spade a spade. But how have you made peace, or how's your relationship with God helped you make peace with the parts of your story and your journey so far that have maybe led you to sometimes feel you're not good enough or you don't fit in?
I think something around knowing that I'm loved by God has been so helpful, and looking back to everything that I went through and knowing that I was loved then. And God never left me, even in like some of the darkest places. And there's a Bible verse that I love, He'll give you a crown of beauty instead of ashes. And I felt like that was such a positive, strong force for me. It was like, I've been through a lot. And most of it was self-inflicted, some of it not so much. And that left me in a really bad place. But God wants to use that and turn it into something beautiful. And I love that God brings about that transformation. So knowing how much He loves me, knowing how much He loves people that hurt me as well, and knowing that, trying to understand, like seeking to understand their perspective. When I think about that relationship that I mentioned earlier, I don't think he ever set out to act the way he did, but also he's hurting and people are hurting and hurt each other. So trying to find understanding for that's been really good. But yeah, just knowing that God's with me has been so beautiful. Feeling His peace. I don't know, there's something so strong about the connection we can have to God, and it's like the soul connection. Yeah. I can be having a bad day or worried or thinking about my past, and I just put a song on and I just sit there and reflect and feel God's peace like that. And it just changes things. And having Him as like my close companion, having His presence when I'm feeling scared or when I'm looking back and feeling upset. It's like, wow, God was with me then and He's with me now.
Yeah, that's amazing. How about you, Chantelle? How have you made peace with some of the difficult aspects of your life that have maybe caused you to sometimes to feel left out or to feel uncomfortable? How has your relationship with God helped you to make peace with those things? Not necessarily love them or think, oh, I'm so glad that happened, but just kind of, make peace and have contentment in that.
Yeah. I think I wouldn't be the same person I am today had I not have gone through what I have already gone through from childhood till date. And if I grew up and everything was immaculately perfect, I wouldn't be who I am now. And I know that God needs me to be who I am now to impact other people's lives. And that's where my peace comes from, is knowing that everything that's happened and every time, I felt that major rejection or I felt disappointed or something didn't feel right, I know that God is so good, God is so faithful, and God has held my hand, and God wants to get the glory. He's just God all by Himself, and He decides and He chooses, what happens in our life. And the good thing is that God is bringing me into a season where it feels like it's sunny. I feel like I've come out of a very cloudy season, and God is showing me, like, you know what? I had to do these things in order to birth a particular type of character in you, because that particular type of character, I need it somewhere. I'm going to use it to impact the world in many different ways, in smaller circles, in bigger circles, in your children's lives. I'm able to relate with my children on a different level because of being adopted, or because of being rejected at school. So when they come and say, "Oh, Mum, this is happening at school," I'm like, you'd think that I'm like, I call it like an Oprah Winfrey moment. We have like these moments in the car where I'm like, you'd think that it's like, it's all motivational, me going, "You can do it. You're going to be all right. You're the best," and I'm really pumping into them, the way that God sees them, the way I see them, the way that their father sees them, the way that they are seen. And it's almost like they go bouncing out of the car into school, full of this, full of all these gems. And that in itself is the type of impact that is good to have, in my family, and in my friendship groups, and in my music, in my design, in anything I do. I know that I can't reach a certain crowd had I not have gone through what I had gone through growing up. So I'm actually really, I'm happy I've gone through what I've gone through. It's given me the flavor I have, it's given me the quirks I have, and I'm able to accept, the past, and I've made peace with it. Does it still sometimes come back to bite me? Do I still feel sometimes a bit sad? Do I have an off day? I do honestly have those days. I can't lie and say they don't. I don't sometimes sit down and think, "Oh, I wonder what it would have been like, what it would have been like if I had grown up like this, or if another situation didn't happen in my adult life." But I realized that all of those things have, left a mark on me somehow, but for the better, and through God, He's been able to bring out the best in those situations to develop my character even more, and refine me even more, so that I can continue to impact people on a daily basis. Yeah, and even like when it comes to other mothers, and other women, like just let's be honest with one another. Like it's nice when other women are honest with me, and I'm honest with other women. Like, "Oh goodness me, my hair's messy," or just like little little practical things. "Oh yeah, me too. Oh, this is too tight." Sunday, just like we're able to be vulnerable around one another. Those are the type of relationships I also enjoy. And I understand that. If I really do understand that if I had grown up any different, I wouldn't be the same person. And I'm really grateful for what God has done in me as a person. The resilience. I'm a type of person that looks at the glass half full as opposed to half empty, and I'm trying to work what I can do with that glass that's full, and I'm like, right, what we're going to do with what we've got, and I'm grateful for that. I'm really grateful for what God has done and is doing and will continue to do, through what has happened, and through how it will be used further to help. There had been a season of life where it was a bit, I guess I felt a bit sorry for myself, to be honest with you. I did feel a bit like, oh, this is really sad, violins and all. But that season has passed now, and like weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. I do believe that God is bringing me into the season of joy now, where God is like, you've gone through what you've gone through, but I'm still here. I was with you through, like he said, I was with you. I haven't left you. Like I haven't left you. I was always with you the whole time, but trust me, this is all for His glory, and I'm happy with that. As long as God gets the glory, I'm happy with that, and that's good for me. And that's what brings me the peace and the joy. To go forward. To impact others around me. And to be a blessing to other people's lives, Like I feel like because of everything I've gone through, I'm less likely to judge, I'm more likely to be that person you'd come and tell me like, "Oh gosh, you wouldn't guess what happened to me." I would, and it shows up in my friendships, people are happy to really confide in me and tell me things. And I'm grateful for the trust, that and for that position that people, have been able to confide in me a little bit with things.
I really relate to that.
Yeah.
I feel like even though I wouldn't wish my experience on someone, I'm also really happy that it But it happened because I'm able to relate to so many more people than I would have done if it would just been a straight and narrow road.
Yeah.
So when I look back, and because part of my business is going to be supporting women in business, but also part of that I want to be working with younger girls as well who in their teenage years about to go into uni or about to figure out what they want to do, helping them just get into that mindset of like a 16-year-old to like a 19-year-old girl, being like, what did I need at that time? What empowerment, what courage, what identity piece was missing, and being able to help them.
Yeah.
But yeah, being able to connect with other people has just been so much stronger, having experienced multiple different things.
Yeah.
And I think even just that sometimes not being able to fit in is part of the gift that life hands us in the end.
Yes.
I think, as you said, that we actually learn to be okay with being uncomfortable in some spaces, knowing that eventually we'll become comfortable and becoming okay with that. And so, I just wanted to thank you both so much for being part of this conversation. I think it's been rich. I think it's been deep. We've had just an opportunity to just explore the different facets of sometimes feel like we don't fit in, that being a real thing, not feeling good enough, but choosing to go anyway and not going on our own, but knowing that actually God's gone before us and he's with us in the middle of it. So thank you so much, Beth and Chantelle.
Thank you. Thank you.